So, good morning again, everyone, and welcome back to the second part of our lesson. Okay, so on our previous lesson, we were able to discuss anything and everything concerning the death itself of the human person, how are we able to cope up with it, and questioning ourselves likewise. Are you really living an authentic life, di ba? So, kagaya nga ng sabi ko sa mga nakarang lesson, tanungin niyo yung sarili nyo. By this time, as of this moment na kayo ay nabubuhay, are you really like following a path towards yourself, diba? Towards your wholesomeness as a person, or are you being like that yourself just because everyone else around you demands that you should be that kind of person, diba? There are many other aspects to consider then, and kagaya nga nung sinabi ng isang great philosopher sa atin, that if you are not living an authentic life, might as well you are good as a living then, di ba? Kasi wala din naman yung existence mo. You are existing for the path of others. At you are existing according to what other demands to be who you are. Di ba? And on the next part of our lesson, we are going to discuss another sensitive topic then. So let's talk about God then, okay? So this is something that I really don't indulge to or engage in speaking with, especially when it comes to online lessons. But as far as the subject philosophy is concerned, when we are pertaining about God in here, so each and every religion, belief, may mga pinaniniwalaan silang divine being. So ask yourself, as of these modern times, di ba? Do you still believe in God then? Diba? Or are you just believing in God because your parents taught you so, the society taught you so, and or dahil baka wala ka lang na ibang mapaniwalaan, diba? Because ideally, having the word itself that you are a believer in God, do you think it would make you a half of a better person than the others who do not believe in God? So we will find out about that into the next part of our video discussion, okay? So for this one, we are going to discuss then, would you still consider believing in God now in modern times? So good day everyone, and welcome back to the second part of our topic in here for our module 7, philosophy. And our main goal for this topic is to be able to explain the meaning of a human person as a being in a need of God or as a being towards God. Okay, so you can see in here, evidently on our title for today, here on our topic, yan, ina-highlight ko, the human person is a being in need of God and a being towards God. So let us proceed then to a brief abstract of what are we going to discuss for this lesson then. So, since the Stone Age, man has always been fascinated, attracted to, or drawn towards that beyond being. Okay? Before whose awesome power he kneels trembling with reverence. In other words, the human being by nature is a God-oriented, a being toward God. Okay, so kaya nga kung maaalala natin, so I will highlight this part in here for you to have focus on that phrase. Kung maaalala natin, ever since the civilization began, and bago pa man macraft yung mga about music and art itself, it has been demonstrated by people way back then that they are like in belief of something divine already, or of someone, diba, who is outmost superior to all of humankind here on earth, diba? And proceeding then, The Upanishads embodied, di ba, Atman ultimately needs to be united with Brahman. Sa Hinduism naman yon. At sa Old Testament, the psalmist thirsts and yearns for God like the deer that yearns for running streams. So my soul is thirsting for you, di ba? Sabi naman sa mga Kristiyano dito in Tagalog, maging uhaw ka daw sa Panginoon katulad ng uhaw na usa, di ba? Deer, iyan. And among the Greeks, moving forward naman tayo sa mga Greeks, the Platonic man is drawn toward the prototype of his being. Yan yung mga Aristotelian beliefs nila nung panahon. The pure act draws all things, including men, towards itself, diba? Kaya kinot nga dito ni Saint Augustine na dapat daw merong restless flame ang tao, 'di ba? Hindi namamatay na sulo sa kanya or yung bugso ng damdamin na hanapin at pangatawanan ang utos ng Panginoon, 'di ba? Because people would only find rest in God itself, 'di ba? So si Saint Thomas Aquinas at si Saint Augustine, namely these two personalities, sila yung mga isa sa pinakauna talaga na nag-pursue ng theology as part of the study in inculcating to the minds and hearts of the men that one of our ultimate goal as a being then is to follow the commands of God itself. Okay? So, moving forward to this one, makikita nyo sa mga ibang part ng mga statement in here actually a different point of view of how God was perceived then, way back then. So, with this one, while it is true that we experience satisfaction and meaning through our communion with others or through the fulfillment of our projects and endeavors in caring for others, we often find ourselves still searching for that ultimate happiness, di ba? So, isa sa naging goal ng tao nung panahon, and I do believe until now, is the pursuit for happiness, di ba? That's what I am always trying to emphasize. You always seek out for happiness then, for the fulfillment of yourself. But then, come to think about it, di ba? Mag-reflect ka sa sarili mo. Does it really matter at all? Di ba? All the things that you do for yourself and for others, that is in the reality realm, di ba? So, ito tayo ngayon in modern time, still, di ba? Yung pursuit nyo ba sa happiness, would it like justify you being a human being? Matatawag nyo na bang fulfilled yung human self nyo kapag na-pursuit nyo yung happiness? And this is also true to every intimate personal relationship. In the beginning, young lovers or newly married couples experience certain bliss or joy as if nothing else matter. Diba? So, katulad nga nung sabi sa Tagalog, walang ibang tatalo, 'di ba? Sa tamis daw ng unang walik, sa unang pag-ibig, ayan. So, after a while, however, this seamless reciprocity, so para hindi kayo malito, when we say something is in reciprocal, ibig sabihin noon, kabaliktaran 'yan. We have our beloved starts to change. We find that our lovers have their own individuality, which is not always in harmony with ours, and we find ourselves yearning for something more. One factual reality in life is that we can never fit in anyone else's shoes. Bakit? You yourself as an individual, di ba? By virtue of individuality, napakalabo at napakalayo sa reality na the independence of your thought, di ba? The chains of actions that you actually execute in your everyday life, that it would harmonize with someone else as if it was like perfectly done for some cause, di ba? And unfortunately, let's move forward for this one. Unfortunately, for some people who reach this stage of a relationship, they think that this feeling of a longing means that they should start looking for someone else in their lives, diba? And many times, we have heard of the great adulterer who moves from one commitment to another because he does not seem to find the ultimate happiness he is longing for. So, long story short then, if you are always in pursuit with your happiness, and if you are always like being this kind of a self-centered person, neglecting the fact that you are actually part of the pact or part of the contract itself for the marriage, diba? That's why it results to what? To, let's say, to broken families, diba? So iba pa yon sa sitwasyon ng mga polygamists, diba? Yun yung may maraming let's say maraming wives, so safe to say, in legal terms for their certain religion, di ba? So tayong mga naniniwala sa certain religion natin, halimbawa for example, okay, you are like a believer of Catholicism, okay, or let's say yung partner mo naman is a believer of like a non-sectarian movement, halimbawa nasa Christian group, may ministry, ganito ganyan. For somehow, some part of your belief does jive with one another. But digging into it deeper, there are certain, let's say, provocative thoughts, and there are certain, let's say, ambiguities within the organization na hindi magja-jive sa other one, or sa mag-create ng mutualism between the two bodies, di ba? The two bodies are the individual. Kaya nga, kung maririnig nyo, I'm sorry to drop names of religions din. Halimbawa lang naman, Iglesia ni Cristo, di ba, ikakasal sa Muslim, o yung Muslim ikakasal sa Kristiyano, o sabihin natin yung Katoliko naman, ikakasal sa born again, so on and so forth, di ba? Isabay na natin yung saksi ni Jehovah, mga Adventist, marami, name it, di ba? They are looking forward that somehow it's either the male or the female then adapts to the belief of their partner as part of their culture, di ba? Napakabihira yung maririnig natin na magkakaroon ng meeting of the minds in an instant, yung mga ganito, lalo yung mga die-hard na fan ng religion nila, di ba? And at the end of the honeymoon stage, sabi dito, the end of the honeymoon stage, blissful moment with our beloved does not mean the end of our relationship. It only means our relationship is in need of someone or something beyond each other. It is a relationship in need of God. Sabi ni Rudy Visker, di ba? Na isang philosopher then who lived all throughout that certain period of time specified here in your module. And sabi pa dito, may in-address dito si St. Augustine. On one hand, communication with fellow men is an ontological need. That is to say, a need that affects me in my existence as a value to be realized. Diba? On the other hand, it is there, pointing beyond the interhuman dimension. This higher source of value and meaning is a being that can be spoken to an absolute subjectivity. So, addressed yan ni St. Augustine sa on one of his speech, actually. Now, moving forward for this topic then, it only tells us the truth that no matter what is the social status, or let's say the current status of an individual is, there is this or there would be this longing for a belief or disbelief in God at all, di ba? But on this specific topic that we are relaying to you, actually we are not like discussing this in our own perspective. We are discussing this in the perspective of the philosopher who actually devised or came up with that certain kind of idea then. At sinasabi nga nila dito that man is a divine product of a divine being then. So that's why man itself should be towards God. Diba? Dapat God-centered yung buhay mo. That is what they are trying to emphasize. Now, part of our being human is to be oriented towards God, to be yearning and longing for the greatest being, to have a taste of touch of the good the beautiful, and the truth. Now, the capitalization of the last few words in the preceding sentences signifies our longing for the highest degree of our experience, the highest good, the most beautiful, and the clearest of truths, diba? So, let us discuss these keywords then one by one. So, sabi sa Bible ng mga Katoliko, sabi rin sa Quran ng mga Islam, at sabi sa mga text ng mga Hindu, mga religious text nila, it is being absolute na halos may isang goal lang naman ang mga religious thoughts, beliefs, and religious, let's say, learnings na may extract mo sa kanila. Why is that so? It is like teaching their member or the part of their organization to live within the commandments of a certain being or a divine being, a God in existence, di ba? Kaya nga may mga nakilala akong friends along the way, mga nakasalumuhang katrabahong tao na in which ideally, kung titingnan mo yung religion namin, it's like it is very separating in a way na magkaiba, di ba? From the manner how we pray, what do we believe, and the contents of the Bible then, and what are some of the things that needs to be considered in life. Pero when it comes to the workforce then, you as being part of a team, as a team player, you always have to respect each another, di ba? Sasabihin ko sa inyo, sa first part ng ating lesson, you should respect always the thoughts and opinions of others as long as it is not harming you in any ways, di ba? Same applies with this one, di ba? You should respect someone else if like that being or person is believing into a different version of God, di ba? For you, that is a variant of God, di ba? Minsan nga sasabihin nila, ay ano yan, sekta yan, ay ano yan, kulto yan. But then, coming to think of it, you as an individual, well, if you do believe in that, wala rin kami magagawa. We just have to respect you morally. Why? Because you are part of the society, di ba? Di mo pwedeng i-discriminate yung isang tao dahil yun ang belief niya. If you are like believing that someone else is like yung tinatawag nating sugo daw ng Diyos and being a part of a leadership of your religion, so be it. Diba? That is your faith towards that kind of entity. That is your belief. And that should be respected civilly at all times. Okay? So, let us proceed then to the fear of death versus the longing for something more. So far, what we have discussed in this chapter are the two most basic experiences that dominate our everyday lives. So, the experience and fear of death and the longing for something more. Now, putting these two together, we will find a way that they are fundamentally in contradiction with each other. Those who are ruled by the fear of death cannot hear the deepest longings of their heart because they are too busy actually trying to numb themselves from the reality of death, di ba? So, mag-pause muna tayo sa part na yan. Masyado silang naging busy sa personal nilang buhay, like what I have discussed a while ago sa first part. Mas busy sila magpayaman, mas busy sila i-monitor yung status nila sa social media, at mas busy silang ipakita sa ibang tao yung gusto nilang ipakita, a part of who they are in front of the camera then, di ba? Kaya nga, this certain culture of ours, di ba, the young generation we have been here, mostly, it is composed of narcissistic beings, di ba? Yun yung mga taong mahal na mahal yung sarili nila. Oh, mukha mo na nga, wallpaper mo pa sa cellphone, wallpaper mo pa sa laptop. Di ba? I mean, it's everywhere. Di ba? Of course, powered by filter. Yan. So, it is a longing for like idolizing and loving yourself to the extent na hangang-hanga ka sa sarili mo. You're like flexing it from time to time. And dahil lang sinabi ng mga audience mo, you have to post something more. You have to do this for us. Di ba? It would be much better kung halimbawa, kakanta ka, magsasayaw ka, you would do so for their indulgence, di ba? Now, ask yourself, are you really like practicing your independence or your freedom then, doing that? Or are you just slaves to the comment section of your own social media account? Di ba? Pag-isipan yung mabuti. Is it your own will or is it the will of other person, di ba? Just for the sake of not fun, mga tinatawag nating non-fungible items. Yan, yung mga react, yung mga follow, di ba? Basically, this type of things wouldn't even suffice or supply you with your basic needs. But then, for you, that is like one of the most important thing on earth. Bakit? That is your valuing toward that, okay? And those who embrace their longing for God then, however, would find that death is not something that we might need be too afraid of. Na hindi natin dapat katakutan. Because the fear of death loses its sting. So, sabi nga ni Roger Transfontaines, describes a person who replaces the fear of death with the longing for God in the moment in his deathbed, di ba? Kaya kung madalas yung maririnig or makikita, kahit nga sa mga pelikula, di ba, at the very last grasp of breath of someone who is already dying, anong ginagawa nila? Di ba? Pinapaulyo nila, pinapamisahan nila. Or sometimes this type of personalities, they die holding a rosary or a Bible. Bakit? Ultimately, they have lived a life, a material life, di ba? And then, last moment, because of fear of death, because para lang to compensate the fear of death, maniniwala ka na ngayon sa Diyos. Bakit? Parang, it's sad to say, parang napipilitan niya lang yung iba kasi in time na eh. Di ba? And it really comes with the saying, di ba? Na for me is like really nonsense when you are trying to correlate it with the practice for the belief of something or a divine being, di ba? Sasabihin nila, wala naman daw mawawala kung maniniwala ka. Imagine, you have lived a very materialistic life. Sa huling hininga mo, may sakit ka, alam mo you have only a few hours to live, and then you decide, that is the time I have to believe in God. Bakit? Gusto mong mapunta sa langit. So like it's like you are doing it likewise for a show. Diba? It doesn't justify na for all of those times na malakas ka pa, you took it for granted, but then last minute mo, bigla mong sasabihin to everyone like God is waiting for you. It doesn't make sense at all. Diba? Dahil lang sa concept na wala namang mawawala pag naniwala ka. And that is not how faith and belief goes hand in hand then, okay? Let us proceed with this one. So the person oriented towards charity, di ba, with all of his life has sought a more profound union with God and others, and it will open a full spontaneity in the moment this communion is being proposed to him. So balikan natin. Commonly, or let's say I can tell most of you are Roman Catholic. So sa mga iba yung religion, this is only for example purposes. Yan. Sa mga Roman Catholics, may tinatawag tayong sakramento. Yan. There are many actually sacraments, and namely one of those is the communion. Okay? And for this one, matatandaan nyo, yung iba nga sa inyo nag-first communion pa, di ba? Yung may suot kayong puti sa ulo, tapos naka-amen pa yung kamay nyo nung time na mababait pa kayo tingnan sa picture. May hawak kayong kandila, ayan. My first communion, di ba? And it's sad to say, until now, whenever I talk to someone about this whole communion thing, parang nami-misinterpret nila, or they live, let's say, they lived a lie. What is that communion all about, di ba? Likewise, it is a communion to totoo. It is a communion with your communion with God. But remember, that is your communion to the whole humanity then. Bakit? Sino bang makakasalamuha mo sa earth habang nabubuhay ka. 'Di ba? Or let's say on your belief, God is always with you. Pero sino ba ang magsasuffer ng mga consequence ng action mo? Sino ba ang makaka-witness ng mga consequences ng mga choices mo sa buhay, 'di ba? Yung kapwa-tao mo rin. So it's your communion with the community, 'di ba? Kaya nga the prefix itself it's a communal process, 'di ba? Something in common. Ayun, it's your communion with the society itself that you are in. 'Di ba? Kaya nga may kandila. Yung kandila, it symbolizes in the Roman Catholic sa parte na 'yon ng ceremony, it symbolizes the wisdom of God. It means the wisdom of God is always with you. But given the point na mamatay yung kandila, and that is the time that you have to use your own free will, then it's up to you if you would still live your life according to the wisdom of God, His teachings, or you live your life as it is, di ba? Parang papangatawanan mo na yung you as your own master. Alright, so moving forward for this one, I will highlight this one for you. The longing for God does not mean, however, that we will no longer need others in our lives. Alright, so on the contrary, when we embrace this longing for God, we are able to love one another more fully and unconditionally. So let's stop in there. So it really presupposes that by implication, loving for God and loving your, let's say, yung pagmamahal mo na lang sa kapwa. When you show that to your fellow men, you're actually loving God in Himself. Why? If you love your neighbors unconditionally, diba? When we say something unconditional, those are the things which do not have parallel consequences na you are like expecting another good deed with one another, diba? So that is in contrary nga with the golden wisdom, diba? Alam niyo kung ano yung golden wisdom? Yung tinatawag nating golden saying then that what goes around turns around. Kung ano lang yung ginagawa mo sa kapwa mo, that is the same thing na babalik sa iyo, di ba? So always remember, you're longing for God. If you want to serve God, serve your countrymen, di ba? Serve your fellow people, di ba? Maging mabuti ka sa iyong kapwa at magiging mabuti ka rin sa mata ng Diyos. Pero disclaimer, yung term dito ng pagiging mabuti, it does not only mean that you have only to do good deeds for that cause dahil good siya, 'di ba? So tatagalugin natin, kapag ikaw ay gumagawa ng mabuti dahil lang naniniwala ka sa Diyos, 'di ba? You're not being too good at all to anyone or to any person, 'di ba? You have to do good things because that is actually good. 'Di ba? The goodness in a sense of that, it means, hindi mo kailangan ng divine being na tatakutin ka na paparusahan ka dahil mapupunta ka sa impyerno pag gumawa ka ng masama. No, huwag kang gumawa ng masama kasi masama yun. That should be it, diba? And at this point, we have come full circle to the point of reflecting in the meaning of life in the face of uncertainty of death. Now, we have come to understand how a large part of the act of philosophizing is conditioned by hope. So, let us only highlight this part in here. So, sabi dito, a large part of the act of philosophizing is only being conditioned by hope then. Sabi ni Piper noong 2009. Diba? It is philosophizing that has brought us to the point of questioning. With philosophy, we have learned that the philosophical questions only give birth to more questions rather than give us straightforward and certain answers. So kung gusto mo ng diretsong sagot sa isang tanong, kung gusto mo ng diretsong sagot in a certain matter, may question ka sa buhay, wag kang mag-turn back sa philosophy. Bakit? Philosophy will only give you further questions. And despite the uncertainty, however, philosophy does well in convincing us to take the direction of hope rather than absolute cynicism, because hope is what condition our lives more deliberately and more meaningly. Diba? Hope anchors the soul. So, stopping from there, let us discuss about hope then, okay? Now, many of us have probably read all throughout the Bible itself sa mga Katoliko. Another disclaimer. Di ba? Kung ikaw ay hindi naman Katoliko, may sarili kayong book. So be it. That is our example for you then. But try to imagine the purpose of this, let's say, doctrines is for you to be able to gain hope from them. Diba? Kasi kapag may Diyos daw, may pag-asa. Diba? Let's not lie to ourselves. It is not actually us who give hope to ourselves. It is this certain belief to a certain something, certain someone, or a certain divine being, which actually drives us, diba? It drives our thirst, our hunger for the sake of hope, diba? Because we tend to take chances, diba? Palagi nating sinasabi sa sarili natin, what if there is a second life after our death? What if there is really a heaven? What if we could go to hell? What would happen to all of us, diba? And imagine, for 300 plus years that we were like colonized by the Spaniards then. Napakalaking influence, diba? Take note, in Asia alone, the Philippines is one of the highly dense population with Roman Catholics as religion, diba? Yung mga neighboring countries natin, ngayon na lang nagiging Katoliko yung mga yan. Diba? But imagine for 300 years, paulit-ulit, tinakot ng mga praile yung mga Pilipino, ikaw, kapag di mo binigay yung anak mong dalaga sa praile, mapupunta ka sa impyerno. That's what happened. Diba? Religion were mostly used to conquer other lands, to conquer other states, and to maintain supremacy and power. Because why? Because they are saying that God is on their side. So, on the contrary then, that belief in God does give us hope. It is safe to say that history-wise, also belief in God, it's like, consider it this way, it had inculcated fear, di ba? Nagtanim sila ng katatakutan sa puso ng mga tao until now, na it comes to a point that whenever you utter something that is not agreeable on their end, they tag you or they tag the act as a blasphemy. O di ba? Kapag hindi sila sang-ayon sa iyo nung unang panahon, tatawagin kanilang mangkukulam. Di ba? And like for example, like for other scientists and philosophers, di ba? Imagine, nung unang panahon, pag sinabi mong bilog ang earth, iko-condemn ka nila. Di ba? Si Galileo, he was condemned by the church. Why? Sinabi niya na yung sun, yung earth, umiikot sa sun. In which early Catholics have this belief in their life na yung sun ang umiikot sa earth because of a geocentric perspective. So, kung ano yung reality ngayon, that is not the absolute reality for the further days to come. Imagine niyo ganung kabilis magbago, mag-shape ng civilization, ng belief, even mag-transcend ng mga concepts sa science itself at sa philosophy, di ba? And coming to think about it, even sila Plato and Aristotle and sila Socrates, di ba? Kung mapapansin nyo, hindi ko sila masyadong pinupuntok or tinututukan ng pansin sa mga lesson natin. Why? Their concepts are absolutely obsolete. Hindi na applicable yun ngayon. None of them would even exist applicable in your life, di ba? Sa pilosopong pangangatwiran nga, lahat ng concepts ng mga makalumang philosophers, hindi ka tutulungan yan mag-produce ng bigas sa araw-araw para may kainin ka. Diba? Because it's not just that applicable anymore. We are living in the modern world. You are in the golden age of a digital platform. Diba? You have two lives that you are maintaining, diba? Your physical life and your digital life. Sabi ko nga sa Medlit. And in summary then, we are naturally being towards God. So we long for God and ultimate happiness that we cannot experience from our relationship with our fellow beings. Yan. So this yearning is, however, sometimes overshadowed by our fear of death and the uncertainty of what will happen after death. But instead of falling into the trap of cynicism, philosophy invites us to hope, and hope gives meaning to our lives. Hope makes our lives deliberately and meaningfully. By living a life of hope, that one day we will be with our God and we will be no longer afraid of death, and we will be able to love other people more fully and unconditionally. Okay? So I do encourage each and every one of you makinig at makinig ng mabuti. Kung sino man yang pinaniniwalaan yung Diyos, kung ano man yan yung belief nyo, pagpatuloy nyo yan. No one ever and no one shall be in contrary of you, shall be in, let's say, in an act of hold of your belief, your disbelief. We do respect that. We have to respect each and everyone when it comes to the concept of believing of God. Whether you believe in the first place or not, it's really up to you. You have your own intellect, use it, 'di ba? Palaging tatandaan, ang ulo hindi patungan ng buhok. So you always have to remember, each and every time you act, each and every time you utter a word or you type that something on your social media posts, mag-isip, would this bring hope in any way to my colleagues, or will this bring a negative, or let's say a despairing feeling, di ba? Parang nakakanega na vibes towards yourself and towards your circle of friends around you, di ba? Your true friends and your fake friends. All right? So moving forward then for our activity in here. So for application, pakisagutan ng items for the 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 5, and for our check for understanding, be able to explain in your own words the meaning of a human person then is being in need of God and a being toward God. Okay, so that ends our lesson for today, and I do hope and somehow I do believe that ikaw na nakikinig ngayon, alam ko may pinagdadaanan ka. Each and every one of us has battles to face in their life, di ba? Siguro nakikinig kayo na loudspeaker ngayon, or you are, let's say, nasa headphone ka or nasa headset, earphone. So palagi mong tatandaan, huwag kakalimutang mag-message kahit hindi kay Sir Leo, kahit sa ibang teacher. Kapag may problema kang pinagdadaanan, we will help you out at the best we could. Diba? Sometimes a good fellow man could just be a good listener to someone who is in despair, and I do respect that. Okay, so be kind to each and everyone else. Bakit? Each one of us has a battle in their lives. So mag-isip ka ng paraan, how can you be able to help out others, just even with a simple thought of uplifting others, di ba? Sa simpleng pangungumusta, sa simpleng pagtugon ng tama at medyo justifiable na sagot sa mga nag-i-inquire, nagme-message sa inyo. So, yun. So be it still, I wish you a very prosperous week in here. Good health with all of you guys, you and your family. And remember that even if ano yung religion mo, even if ano yung belief nyo, tatandaan nyo palagi yung saying na to, okay? A religion would not make a man out of you. Rather, man only makes religion by themselves, okay? Well, you do have a great day then, and stay safe, everyone.